Okay, this is Randy Voller again on TaJ Talk. We're still here at the Democratic meeting with another DNC member, Sheila Huggins, out of Durham. Sheila, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a little warm out here, but hey, it's a great day.
It is a little warm. I think Eric Ellison was looking for the taco truck. So I want you to address the audience and talk to them a bit, because I know we're going to make this quick. You got elected to the DNC at our first meeting, and this is your first term as a DNC member. What are you hoping to accomplish as a DNC member for the state of North Carolina and your community?
So let me sort of say one of the things that I said to the chair and some of the other candidates when they were interested in seeking my vote when they were running was, you know, North Carolina is now a battleground state in terms of making an impact. Nationwide elections. And especially in 2020 as we go forward. And so, you know, this sort of idea that they're not coming here or they're only doing TV ads was just not the approach that we were going to be able to have. And so they really needed to be able to come to North Carolina to talk to people, to get on the ground, to knock on doors, to do some canvassing, and sort of educate people about the values of the Democratic Party. And the other piece was, well, hey, I live in Durham now, you know, and so anything that we want to do statewide in North Carolina, we really have to focus on Durham also. And so, you know, there's always been this talk of certain communities or certain groups within the party being left behind or not being reached out to appropriately. And so, you know, Durham's one of those communities where people come out to vote, and we actually really support the Democratic Party. So it would be really helpful to sort of have the DNC at the national level understand what we needed to do at the local level to show that support. The whole idea here really is just to sort of let people know about our values. You know, we want to make sure that they have access to good education, health care. All of these things matter. And so that's what we really need to be sharing with the people in the community.
So you kind of alluded to the notion of the importance of Durham in terms of in the state and the Democratic Party and progressive politics, getting out to vote. I shared with you and other members of SEC a bunch of statistics on our county parties that show voter engagement and involvement. Durham is one of those counties where it has a large net vote total for Democrats. But if we could even up the engagement there, if folks that are watching this there who aren't voting would vote, we could make an even bigger difference.
That's right. You know, and it was sort of one of the reasons I paid a lot of attention to the DNC chair race, because I really wanted to know that they understood that by focusing on, you know, not just the state or the local level, but almost a micro level, you know, really touching base with people in the community, just as you're saying, then yes, you get this sort of impact that's not just local, it starts to move beyond that. And so once you've engaged those people, you know, to bring them up as they move to other areas, they then take that with them. And so if we don't start to focus on that more, exactly as you put that, then we lose that as an opportunity. It's a missed opportunity.
I mean, so a lot of people, when I was chairman of the state party, were very sad that Kay Hagan lost to Tom Tillis. One of the things that I pointed out was that there were certain communities that were not properly canvassed to, and the margin was so close that had we actually upped the vote in Durham County, Guilford County, Forsyth County, Cumberland, Mecklenburg, Wake, Buncombe, we could have potentially won that election. So when people think my vote doesn't matter, I'm too busy to vote, no, the votes are in the aggregate. Your vote may not seem like it matters when there's millions of votes, but actually when it gets down to these, you know, final few numbers, they're all in the aggregate. And in the local races, they're so important. A race could be won by 5 votes, by 10 votes.
Yeah.
And the person in that office, in my experience, can make a real difference in the community. What do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you definitely hit that on the head. When people go back and even look at Linda Coleman's race for lieutenant governor, and you start looking at the breakdown of that, and you stop looking maybe for a second at the aggregate, and you take it back down to the really local level, and you go, oh my gosh, what if we had been able to get 100 more votes per precinct or per county or something like that? And so people stop thinking about them not being able to have a voice, and you start saying, hey, look, for 10 more votes in every precinct, this is what we could do statewide, you know, and that would have definitely made a difference in Kay Hagan's race. And but I think you touched on another thing too. There were people who, because of some missed canvassing there, that, just didn't even know who she was, and so sometimes the candidate can't be everywhere, but we need to sort of have this spider network that reaches out, these surrogates that can say, hey, let me tell you about it. Let me tell you what's going on. And so then we bring it back down to that local level, and it's sort of like, yes, you have a vote, and your friends have a vote, and your family members have a vote, and your colleagues have a vote. And once you add each one of those up, that's how you make a difference.
So how I always looked at it is I told people, start with your family network.
Yeah.
You assume that every family member is voting, and in fact, it's not true. And they don't know that you can actually check the Board of Elections to see that you voted. You can't check who you voted for.
Right.
Your vote is sacred. But they can check that you voted. It's like Santa Claus, verifying if you're naughty or nice.
That's right.
And I've had a lot of people tell me, Mayor Voller, I voted, and they didn't vote. And they don't know you can check this. But I would tell folks, go to your family networks, and if you focus on your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and your nieces and nephews and your children, and start there, and educate people about the issues.
Yep.
That's how we can actually make a difference. So I've got to ask you this tough question. In our town, I spoke to our city, our city fathers and mothers, our city council on Monday, after these tragic and horrible events in Charlottesville.
Right.
And we have an old statue, a monument in town from 1909. Which is right in the center of the state, 15501 and US 64.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that
I know where that
15501 is the old Jefferson Davis Highway, so even the name of that highway has an embedded meaning. And I told them they needed to be proactive and thoughtful about what's going on, and that we really need to think about a process for potentially moving this monument, either removing or moving, but a thoughtful process engaging the community. And while I was speaking to them in Durham, where I used to live, the statue was actually brought down.
Right.
How are your thoughts about that, or having grown up here?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've done a lot of work in downtown Durham. My office is in downtown Durham, and that's where I practice law. And so, on a daily basis, you're sort of walking, around these monuments, and other people are in their communities too. And so, my thinking when I'm seeing a monument, even if I'm not reading, the inscription that's there, I'm thinking that this is a person, whoever it is, who has made a valuable contribution to this country. That even today, when we look at those contributions in totality, that we would still uphold that person today. Okay? And so there is sort of this disconnect, okay, when you look at some of who's on statutes now, who these monuments are, and you say, we wouldn't value that today. That's not what we hold true to who we are. And so we definitely need to have a way of going back and saying, nope, this one needs to go. Nope, this one needs to go. Nope, this one needs to go. And we need to be very clear about that is not acceptable today.
I've really had to wrestle with this issue personally because, my family, my father came here from Germany, and we all know what happened with fascism in Germany. And my own family was a victim of it. I have Jewish members of my family that obviously were killed. My father married my mother, who was part Jewish, when he came to America. And so I know when I go to Germany, I don't see statues to Himmler or Hitler or other people commemorating them.
That's right.
But I did have relatives that fought for the Wehrmacht, so I understand this heritage issue of honoring people that sacrificed even for something that wasn't a good cause. I'd just be curious about your thoughts about teaching people history and contextualizing it so they understand, when the monuments are passive to me, there's no teaching involved.
That's right. You're exactly right.
So
yeah, and so the missing piece in my mind is this right here. Dialogue. People sitting down and having a conversation about it. We need to do more of that. I don't think we do enough. One of the problems that I continue to think sort of plagues us is we don't give people a safe space to be able to say what's on their minds, because we're immediately attacking, we're immediately judging, and we have a media system that's set up and built up around that sort of relationship instead of one that encourages people to say, hey, you know what, can I have this conversation with you? Because here's what I'm thinking. I know those are not the values I'm trying to promote. That's not the person that I really want to be, but here are some thoughts that I have. And so once you're able to put those thoughts on the table, then you have this, like you said, you put things in context. You talk about where we've come from historically, and then you engage people. That's how you build the future. You know, as long as we're not having these conversations, we're not really attacking the root of the issues here.
No, and I think the root of the issues are what actually is feeding it. I mean, get down to the roots.
Exactly. That's right.
And
That's right.
a lot of people are not very informed with how these monuments
That's right.
or this iconography was created, or why it was created,
That's
or
right.
what the purpose of it when it was created. You know, to them, it starts to feel like an attack on family, even if they're not going to overtly come out and say, oh, this is something about values. It feels like you're attacking my great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother, and then it's a family issue.
Right.
And we all know that then turns into a fight.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think the contextualization is the important point here, the teachable moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to have more of those. I mean, and the part you said about people who don't know the history of how these monuments came to be placed there, the decisions that went into that. You know, I read an article just this week that talked about the naming of the bases in the southern states. And if you go back and look at, you know, Fort Bragg, you know, in North Carolina, we get behind Fort Bragg. We love our military. And there was information in the article about how that naming process took place and who these people actually were, you know? And so, I may not like the actions of the person who's behind the name, but I can still get behind the people in my community and the service people who are still serving us every day. And so, you know, I think that's one on the board that people are going to be looking at, and they're going to be asking some hard questions, you know? I mean, that's really where this is going. We're going to have to ask some questions that we haven't been asked.
And I think the thing that surprised me in an article that I just read about how white supremacy in what we saw exhibited in Charlottesville, which really was a pretext to have a march. It wasn't about the statue of Robert E. Lee. That becomes the narrative, but it's about them having a march to discuss white nationalism, white supremacy, and other values that they're putting out. I was surprised in reading this piece that discussed how Americans have actually passively endorsed this behavior. It's, you know, we have folks like that in all of our communities, but they're a very small number.
Right.
It's other decisions and other values and other things that are done that actually kind of build up. It's this root that we're getting at.
Right.
And while I was driving up here, I was having a conversation with the folks coming to the meeting, and I said, it surprised me to learn that 75% of white Americans that were surveyed, obviously they're not getting all Americans, but, you know, they're projecting the number, did not have a person of color in their social circle, in their friendship.
Yeah.
So they weren't doing what we're doing right here, having a dialogue. And I think that difference, that separation, is part of the problem.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sheila, for coming on. Would you like to say anything else as close?
No, I'm absolutely
well,
good.
thank you for coming on. This is Randy Voller, Sheila Huggins on TaJ Talk. We will bring her back again. We really appreciate you coming on today.